Right, we're rolling. On this podcast, we'll be talking about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton. This is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hi guys, welcome back to Social Antics. Been a few weeks. We took a bit of probably extra time off, I suppose, more than we planned to take off.
Took us about a month to sort out. How are we going to actually do this now in the middle of a pandemic?
I'm sure we'll figure something out now.
Yeah. But yeah, we're back. How's business been for you since we started off after the
It's not too bad. I
Christmas
suppose I went in
break?
and took a few extra weeks off. I ended up getting COVID, so that's the other reason why we didn't do this, I suppose.
Unclean.
Bad enough having COVID, having to listen to you in the middle of it as well.
Oh jeez, yeah. No, I wasn't affected by it, thank God. But you can see, I said it to one of my buddies there during the week, where before you kind of got the sense of if you look after yourself, socially distance, wash your hands, and so on and so forth. Wear your mask and so on and so forth. You are kind of protected, like, do you know what I mean? Okay, you can get unlucky and you can catch it in the community, but more like you should be okay based on the transmission rate. Now it's like if you go down to the shop at the wrong time, you're going to get it. Like, everyone is just picking it up from places and they can't even identify. Like, a few of my buddies now were asked, like, they got it and they were told, oh yeah, where'd you get it? And they were like, we've no fucking idea, like, genuinely, like, do you know what I mean? So it's a strange.
It is. Look, it's out there, but I suppose, look, it's been a busy few weeks for both of us, I suppose, and that's the joys of us having, this is not our day job.
Well, we're not getting paid for this now. I'm not getting any director's remuneration.
No. Look good in your CV. So we've both been busy in day to day. Like, how has things been going for you in teaching?
So even though I was teaching last semester, it was kind of sporadic. Whereas the second semester is when I tend to do the most of my teaching, and it's a catastrophe. There's no two ways about it. Like it's turned. The best way I can describe it is that it's turned what was a very, very relational process, getting to know the students, understanding what they're interested in, building examples around that kind of.
I've been in your classes and we've done guest classes, and as you said there, like, you're throwing stuff out to the class.
It's a co-production, right? It's a performance from you as the lecturer, but ultimately it's a co-production. You need to feed off them, and they then ultimately, the whole point is that they feed off you and they learn stuff, and importantly they feed off each other. Now it's staring at a screen. Most of them have their cameras off. It's harder to force engagement, and whatever you say about, like, so they can still ask me questions, but what I've noticed is that there's not as many comments being thrown in my direction, and what's definitely not happening is that there's no interaction with each other. Those things are completely removed from the process.
When you're in a class, you'll always get one or two lads that no problem at all putting up their hands, and we're trying to get them to shut up is the problem. But I suppose like you kind of have, we've talked before about keyboard warriors. I suppose it's the opposite, is no one wants to talk in a room of 100 odd people.
100%, and they don't know each other. Really. So
which I feel worse for the first years coming in. I think that's the worst. I think this is a very bad situation.
I do, and there's an element to both about it. Look, for the first years they're not getting the college experience at all. They don't know what the experience is, and even so they're being socialised in a completely backward way. But for the final years, then you're kind of like, it's our last year in college, like, do you know what I mean? And you're kind of stuck in this.
Going out with a bang.
Should be, yeah, exactly. But that's what the whole, like, going back to the whole college experience. Like, that's just the lectures that I'm talking about there in terms of it being changing from relational to transactional and the issues with that. But then beyond that, then no networking events, no bigger events, speakers, societies are gone. Can't go out on the lash, which is an important part of it. You don't have the campus.
I'll actually give a good plug actually to the lads. I know you're not going to like this now, you'll be in UCC, but actually the lads out in CIT or MTU now. MTU, the newly branded college out there is the marketing site out there doing a fantastic job, because obviously they're not in the class or meeting up outside the classes or whatever, learning and all this kind of stuff. They're actually getting guest speakers to come on Zoom and do guest talks to them, like, you know, and obviously it's a lot harder before this to probably get people, like, you know, decent marketing people to come into the college, like, you know, with a busy life, you know, and they're not going to come in the middle of the day. So now they're actually probably getting really nice names to come in and talk to them, like, you know, but because it's in the evenings or it's during the day on Zoom and stuff like that. But they're doing a fantastic job.
That makes sense. Like, it does open up other opportunities as well. Guys who would have been harder to get a hold of, like even in the program that I predominantly teach into. There's a part of that program which we call the capstone, which is basically a strategy case study around a particular industry. This year was the airline industry. So this year, I know.
That was an easy project.
Yeah. So what it meant is that, like, before you wouldn't have been able to get the one of the directors from EasyJet in, but he was in for 3 hours giving them his talk and all the rest of it. If that was the normal day to day, you would have had to, like, book him out for 2 days, like, and that's not happening.
Get someone down from Cork Airport or something, hopefully, if you're lucky.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, there's opportunities with it, but when it's the complete flick off, it doesn't really work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd have no problem with a more blended approach going forward. Like, if you're doing lab sessions or something like that, they don't need to be in class. You can do that remotely and all the rest of it. But I still think but I still think for the lecture in and of itself, that's best taught in person, and it's best that the students are on campus as much as possible.
And do you find now, so say in the last couple of weeks, or sorry, even more so, like we're going back now to last year really, do you find that because, you know, we've talked about here, consumer habits are changing, you know, purchasing has changed, all this kind of stuff has changed, have you found the need to change material and how you teach and what you teach? Do you find a need to change some of this, like as in like kind of being a bit more reactive? Or?
Kind of, because I mean the problem here is that, right, the stance at the moment is that COVID isn't going to be around forever. So for the current cohort that I'm teaching, the logic is that if they graduate or they're out the gap in September, we would like to think that COVID will probably be gone then. So therefore you need to be teaching people how they do things in the normal world and not completely COVID. Plus, I kind of said it to a lot of my classes that, look, I'm not going to mention COVID as much as possible for the simple reason that they're probably going into every class and everyone is talking about fucking COVID, and then they go home and they're talking about fucking COVID, and then there's the podcast that they listen to, and what are they talking about? Fucking COVID. So there's like, I just kind of said, look,
I'll give you a break. You're
you're
very kind, actually.
I'm a lovely person. I'm very caring. Kind of. But ultimately there are some stuff that you do have to look at, right? So looking at the growth of Apple from a $1 trillion company to a $2 trillion company in 5 months, dominance of Amazon, and how they're using this as an opportunity to basically change consumer habits to a point where things don't go back. Looking at things like Zoom, for example, and look at the dynamics around, like I did a session there the last day, and we talked about Zoom, and all of them were saying, oh, isn't Zoom really, really positive, or just online platforms in general, others are available.
Others, Microsoft Teams has been wrecking my head.
I'm using that inside. It's terrible, I agree. But ultimately, they were all saying, oh no, Zoom is brilliant, you can control long distance and work long distance and blah blah blah, we don't have to go into work and all the rest of it. But ultimately that might be a bit novel for a while, but ultimately if you look at young professionals or people just coming out of college, even going into their mid-30s, people want to go into work, to socialise, meet people, go on dates, understand things, and there's other things that can be unintended consequences coming out of this as well. So segregation, for example, if you're by yourself living in your apartment and you're only, again, engaging with your colleagues on a transactional basis, you don't get to know their background, and therefore when you have companies like your Dells, your Apples, Teamwork.coms, doesn't matter what it is, your Slacks, if you've got all of these companies and people are just operating remotely, you don't get to learn about people who came from different places, different ethnicities, different backgrounds and so on and so forth. So that could be an unintended consequence as well. So I would say that I'm touching on it a bit in terms of the behavioural stuff, but I'm not letting it overshadow the overall content.
You're not letting it affect the date or the basically the practical principles of marketing.
The core functionalities of what we're doing. Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. So I suppose, look, that's one area since the last couple of weeks since we took our extended holiday. That's
enjoyed it as well. Didn't have to listen to you.
You would love it, really. So I suppose another thing that's probably changed in the last couple of weeks, that we kind of touched on before, was we talked about Brexit before, and specifically we talked about it in the last episode, and I'm no intention of going into it in detail now because I'm sick of it. I'm hearing about it on a daily basis in work. We're in the thick of it now, and it's basically up shit creek without a paddle. I think across a couple of sectors, really, we talked about in the last episode that it's going to affect everything from consumers buying. We had it a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? Was it Curry's or someone? People are buying off the .ie address, and it's coming. They're being charged import taxes when the delivery driver turns up to the door and all this kind of stuff. So I think, look, it's going to be a good few months, if not a year or more, of teasing this out and seeing what happens. I don't think
people know. I've 2 web projects at the moment now that I'm working on, building websites from scratch for retailers. If you look at size retailers, one of them is probably 5x, or one of them is probably 5 mil, and the other one is a bit higher, and we're looking to basically take 60% of that revenue and bring it online, essentially, or add it to their current base. And even little things. So we were uploading using Shopify based website, which is perfect. But even trying to work out from a user experience, what's the import tax?
Yeah.
Couldn't work
out. How do we add it onto the price?
And a lot of people that I've spoken to basically said we're all kind of waiting for some clearer guidance to come, because what's the point in investing our time in this when ultimately it's going to change?
Yeah.
And the consumer is ultimately the one that suffers there, because rather than it being in the purchase price, it's instead coming when it arrives on your door and you don't know what it's going to be.
And next thing all you're getting is angry customers. Customer relationship has gone
and
down.
They're not going to understand that. Look, this is Brexit. This is in the case of UK consumers, this is your fault.
You voted for this.
So no,
it's tough. Which should be the automatic response to any English query.
What way did you vote this? You cannot complain.
So I think we talked about it last time about. I think it's interesting for a lot of businesses that need to start looking around this is the whole idea of supply chains. And if you're the supply chains, and the other side of it is if you're marketing and you're looking for that UK market for sales, there's a lot of decisions.
There's more friction than there was previously.
So I think you probably need to look at, is that market worth the hassle, the pain, the revenue? Is it worth it to keep going with?
And the answer is that it is.
It is 100%.
But you have to. It's more difficult. It is more difficult. There's no question about it that it has made it more challenging.
And then in terms of supply chain, we have one company there in work that we were dealing with. We were getting from UK supplier, and literally we went to do an order after the Brexit thing came in, and literally they were like, "Oh, we can't take payment from an Irish customer," and we're like, "Sorry, what?" You knew this was coming, So it's those kind of things. So I think a lot of companies that get supplies, or even ordering supplies, by freight or by air into the UK and then over to Ireland, it's going to cause a lot of people to go further afield, whether it's across Europe, straight to Asia, the States, whatever it is, and they're literally going to go direct, and that's going to have a couple of impacts in terms of you have longer waiting times, longer lead times from when you're ordering. It's going to have an effect on you're going to need to buy in bigger quantities. Obviously all this thing is going to have an effect on cash flow. So there's a few implications that a lot of businesses need to look at.
Everyone's going to have to look at their business model and look at how it's going to impact.
And in terms of marketing, then a lot of businesses that might already had their advertising sitting in the background don't really look at it very often. Think about, am I targeting the UK? Am I still paying a massive amount to target the UK? Do I need to turn it off and make those decisions? So we'll see how that goes down the line. The other big bit of news, I suppose, is we've talked about, as you referred to him, the Orange Man over in the States is gone.
Gone finally, Jesus Christ.
Hasn't popped his head up.
I know I was taking the piss in the last few episodes going isn't it great that he's gone and all the rest, but my God, did he go out with a bang? Jesus Christ. I watch House of Cards.
Went away with his tail between his legs like a bold child.
Literally, I watch House of Cards, and by the end of House of Cards you're going, this is a bit far-fetched. And then you turn on the news and you see a bunch of fucking hicks storming the Capitol, taking.
They don't need actors; they just record that.
I was there watching, going, is this actually real? I think ultimately, look, my opinion on the American president is very, very straightforward. They need to be dignified and not start wars for any reason. And even though Trump, he didn't start any new wars necessarily, he basically started a civil war for want of a better internally. So I think there's going to be a huge amount of work for the Biden administration in terms of healing the relationship with the European Union, because at the moment, from what I can see, the US was a superpower. People look to the US for guidance. What should we do here? People are looking over there now, going, this is a basket case. Like, what the hell is going on in your country? That's not easily fixed, I don't think. I think that is going to take a lot of work and a lot of relationship building.
But you can see it, like he started straight away. He came in and signed 20 odd orders straight away, getting them back into the Paris Accord, back in with the World Health Organization, all these mending relationships around the world.
But like at the same time, if I was a leader in Europe, say I was Merkel or something like that, I'd be kind of looking, going, okay, Biden is there now, he's going to last, say, 4 years. Kamala Harris is not going to get elected because she's black and she's female, and that sounds terrible, but that's what it is. But that's what it is. America, Trump got 75 million votes in the election. There is no chance that the US are what you want to call it, educated enough to elect a female
I think
president.
She will. I think the next 4 years is going to be a highlight on her to be lined up for 4 years.
And I hope that is the case if she's obviously good. I don't know a huge amount about her, but the problem is that if you look at the amount of people that voted for Trump, and I'm not saying they were all the kind of people that stormed the Capitol, but if you've that level of dogmatism towards someone like him, then it's going to be very, very difficult for that metaphorical glass ceiling for either a woman to become president, never mind a black woman to become president. And that's just, that sounds bizarre because it wouldn't happen in, Ireland, for example. Well, I'm not saying that Ireland isn't the problems, but it's not as deeply entrenched as it is in the US. But the main problem, to go back to the point that I was kind of going to make, is that if you have someone like Angela Merkel and they're seeing Trump getting 75 million votes, she's probably looking at going, what's stopping them electing fucking Tucker Carlson next time around? Or another celebrity type president? Because that's what it probably will happen. The most votes of all time, second only to Biden, went to Donald Trump. It's incredible to think like that, but that's the case. So what he's done is he's kind of reawoken people's interest in politics for the wrong reasons in a lot of cases, and what it should do is it should kind of light a fire under the Democrats, going, we have to be better here because they're tapping into something here that we're not able to, so we need to tap into something else here. And I'm not sure they have the capability to do that. So the Biden administration will do a huge amount to mend relationships, but they can be undone very, very quickly, as we've seen in the last kind of 8 years or so. 4 years.
I think
8 years, Jesus.
I think 4 was enough. I think what we've seen, I think in terms of how the administration have took to social is definitely gone back to the days of Barack Obama. It's back to that friendly, keeping people updated. We're putting out videos, putting out nice pictures every day.
Dignified, don't start wars. Simple. I think very, very simple.
I think that's important. That they keep on that, and it's it's obviously a high pressure job for whoever is doing it. So they're definitely gone back to that and getting that, as you said, building the community and getting people back up and going. And believing in the politics again. So it'd be interesting to see. But I say since then, there's obviously been a couple of things then changing in terms of social. So I didn't actually mention, I was going to say this, it just popped into my head there. What did you see the whole thing with Bernie Sanders?
Oh, genius. Absolute genius. The internet is fantastic. I hate the internet, but it's also the best place in the world. When you get things like that, it's genius.
Do you think, right, because we've seen...
You should probably explain to the audience what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the Bernie Sanders at the inauguration looking snug with mittens, and they basically cropped him out, and every company in the world has basically put him in some sort of a photo. Look, I think my opinion on this is there's, this will happen, and it'll obviously shoot up probably more so. Something like this will go across America, and then it'll filter over here in a day, that kind of thing, and we'll start doing it, and then whatever it is. But I think when it comes to that stage, that 2, 3, 4 days after, and you're starting, I'm just talking from a business point of view, if then you're hopping on this bandwagon, I hate that. That drives me nuts. It's kind of, it's too late, it's done. Don't try and keep it going, and
But that's what I saw.
You have to be forced to it.
But there's a lot of brands that were kind of self-deprecating about this as well, in terms of, if everyone else is doing it, we have to as well. Almost prefacing it, whereas we know that this is a bit fucking stupid. Do you know what I mean? Some of them did it very well. Lidl, I think it was, did a good job where they released the Bernie chair.
No, that was IKEA.
Was that IKEA? Was this
IKEA? The Bernie. Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. But I think, and that was a few days after. But I think unless you're at that level, you wouldn't get away with that if that was, you have to be at that level and get to that reach, I think.
But it's one of the, it's a superficial thing. It falls into the category of what I call kind of marketing in the moment, or buzz marketing, shall we say, and that...
try not to hit the mic next time you're talking, will you?
You heard that, did you?
Yeah, we did hear that.
Yeah, for fuck's sake. I usually don't set up on my side. Usually Doyle does all the work, but obviously COVID. So in relation to but look, it falls into the category of marketing in the moment, right? And I see loads of brands doing this regularly. It's fine. You don't build brand equity based on marketing in the moment. Well, Lidl have done a bit of it, to be fair, because they constantly do it. But when there's something this kind of global and everyone's latching onto it, kind of everyone wins at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no. Like, will IKEA sell a number of those chairs? Probably, but it's not going to be a game changer for them.
No,
it's marketing at the moment, and that's all it is.
I just think that businesses have to watch when they do these things. Like, it's great to be one of the first ones to do it, but like, if 20 companies in your network have done it and you're the last one to it, it's like, unless you're going to outshine the rest of them, don't.
Yeah,
I think I think it's kind of a bit too late. But following on, look, we're talking about America, we're talking about the mess that is, we haven't mentioned, haven't seen much mention around fake news, I suppose, but a bit of news that popped up for me, it was launched last week in America, and I think it's interesting, is this idea of Twitter released Birdwatch. I'm not sure if you came across this, did you?
Starring Dermot Bannon or something.
Birdwatch, EcoWatch.
EcoWatch.
No, what it is basically, it's basically an approach that lets users add notes to tweets that have gone out there that they believe to be misleading. It's in its pilot stage in America. They're trying it out. It's to remove this whole idea of basically fake news. To me, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think, but I think it's too late. I think, like,
this shite, it's terrible idea.
Why do you think
the horse is bolted? Like,
yeah,
this is done. Like, Twitter aren't the main culprit here, but like, I mean, if you look at I think that's right. I think what you just said there, I think Twitter is not the main culprit. I think what people have to realise is this is not Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or anything. Obviously, look, they're the cesspits that it happens on, but I think people have to realise that this is the news companies that are at fault here. Like, they're throwing out... no, not really. I mean, mainstream news and fake news are totally different things, right? Obviously,
sorry, I should have said media, like opinion sites
of course. So,
amateur news sites.
Yeah. So, like...
The professional news sites sometimes are not much better.
No, not much better, to be fair. But I mean, the problem here is that, look, we know from the data, we know that fake news is 70% more likely to be retweeted, right? And therefore Twitter wants this stuff trawling through their feeds. Because ultimately, if people are fucking enraged on social media, they comment on more things. That's more impressions, more opportunities for them to sell ads. That's what they're interested in. The idea that now the consumer is going to come up with a solution for them, i.e. we are going to report fake news, because fake is often subjective. So what's to stop a load of Trump right-wing supporters reporting mainstream news saying that it's fake based on this, or based on it's a certain opinion? So, like, this idea that this should be on the consumer doesn't really fly with me, as well as that too, and I don't know if you've ever used it, but like, take Gemma O'Doherty over here, for example, or any of the kind of right-wing Looney Tunes.
12 episodes now without mentioning her.
I'm sure we mentioned her before. But like, absolute, like, so she, the amount of people that report her is meant to be staggering. Every single one report. And Twitter often come back and people screenshot it and go, Twitter goes, oh, this isn't a breach of our policy. So what is their policy in relation to fake news? Like, how fake does it need to be before they take it down? So it's all well and good creating a platform for consumers to report things, but what do Twitter actually do? Like, it took them 4 years to take Donald Trump off the platform.
And
the president of the United States was lying
the last
for 4 years. The last week. So they left him up for, 1,700 and something days, and they took him down for the last 14.
Man in the world.
Do you know? So them coming out now and saying that they're going to do stuff.
It's almost like when they took him down, it's almost like, look how good we are, but as you said, like, way too late, like, but they were trying to obviously do the good thing, and when he's going out of office, it doesn't matter. He has no control over them.
There needs to be a full rethink of all that. The polarization, hate speech, fake news. It's clearly Facebook and Twitter, these guys aren't going to do it themselves. It needs to be political in terms of, you need to have this. If you are a media company, which they are, you need to control in some way, shape or form, in the same way that the New York Times do, that any print media does. You need to have some way to filter the type of content that goes viral on your site.
I think we noticed it a lot. I definitely did when the inauguration was happening. The last couple of days of the Trump nightmare was any tweets that were going out. It was actually labelled with something like "This is from an official government page" or something like that. You know, we're noticing. But Twitter, on the back of this Birdwatch thing, they released a statement basically saying, "To date, we have conducted more than 100 qualitative interviews with individuals across the political spectrum who use Twitter, and we received broad general support." More than 100, yeah, is what I found.
100.
I would imagine it's more.
Just to put 100 in context, right? Like, I did a PhD, and this was just me, one person, and I did close to 100 interviews. So now you have an organisation the size of Twitter, and all they can muster up is 100 interviews.
All I'll say is I hope that, like, I've copy and pasted this from social media today, so I'm hoping fake news. I reported.
They only did 10 interviews.
So basically, yeah, they said 100 people. Birdwatch in particular, people valued notes being in the community's voice. So as you already said, you know, it's putting it back in the community rather than that of Twitter of a central authority, and appreciated that notes provided useful context to help them better understand and evaluate a tweet rather than focusing on labelling content as true or false. And our goal is to build Birdwatch in the open and have it shaped by the Twitter community. So they're straight away they're putting the whole
abdication of
everything
responsibility
onto the community.
Oh, it sounds the community want to contribute. No, they don't. The community don't want to do your job for you. It's that's absolute bullshit.
I think the whole idea of, you know, what would be the word? You know, kind of controlling, you know, the fake news and stuff. That it definitely has to be done. But I, as you're saying, like, this whole idea of putting everything onto the community is not the best way of doing it.
Do it centrally. It's a very like this shouldn't be that hard. One, you've got your verified news sources, shall we say, and put them through a rigorous process. Like
to get verified on Twitter, you literally need to, I don't know if it's Twitter or Instagram. I think it's Twitter. You literally have to send in your name, your date of birth. I think it's a passport photo, and a little description of why you think. Now, obviously, that's not going to get you. They have to go and check and screen and the whole lot. Like, but literally, that's it. There's no reference from I work for RT. Here's my boss's reference to why I should be verified. You know, whatever it is.
Why couldn't you have? If you are speaking on, so for example, right? Everyone is just verified now at the moment, right? Why can't you split the verification problem? You've verified news sources, verified journalists. Who have to go through certain organisational pathways. You could have verified medical professionals.
Professional athletes.
People are commenting on things. So therefore people, when they see it, goes, oh yeah, this person is actually legit
in their field.
In their field, and therefore we should take their opinion with some level of weight. Now, that involves investment. But they can do it. These companies are they've loads of money. Like, do you know what I mean? They've loads of cash flow. Facebook in particular.
It's interesting, like, because when you sign up, like, even you think Instagram and Facebook are big on this. Like, one of their sign up things is what category are you in? Why not have, you know, I know we all have the blue ticks, but as you said, purple tick for politics, a blue tick for this, a green tick for that. You know, I think that's not a bad thing. That
and then beyond that, just fix your algorithm.
Yeah.
I think they did a study. Someone did a study. I don't know if it was Twitter or on the news sites. They basically said that something like 80% of the fake news came from less than 300 accounts in the final kind of 100 days of Trump being in charge. So, like, if it's that level of accounts,
surely
and it's hard to you can monitor that. And even you can have a situation whereby if you see a spike in some sort of virality with a new or unknown source, I'm going to check this out before the algorithm is allowed kind of send it out to the masses. Do you know what I mean? Like, this stuff isn't that, like, okay, I'm not going to say it's easy. How you implement the solution is probably complicated, but coming up with the just raw ideas in terms of how you fix the channel, that shouldn't be as complicated as they're making it out to be.
I think so. I also found that, and we've talked about this before in terms of social media use and where you get your news from and all this kind of stuff. In about 2019, you're talking in between 4 and 5 out of 10 Americans got their news from Facebook. So basically, if we look at, you know, we've talked about just there a few minutes ago about social media as being the rapid spread of any information, it means basically anyone can access it. I think it gets to the stage where there's a fine line between credible sources and opinion pages. You know, we've already kind of mentioned
100%, 100%.
And actually, I suppose, like, even think about your job. Like, do you find that popping up? Like, you know, a student hands in a project or someone's doing a bit of PhD or research or anything like that. Do you have to kind of guide them on, don't go over here, get your news or your research or your statistics over here?
Well, yeah, I mean, you have there's verified sources, and then there's there are different layers, shall we say, in terms of the verification. So, like, I mean, for example, right, at a very, very basic level, get your sources from the Star, or not, or don't get your sources from the Sun and the Star. Jesus Christ Almighty, week 1 back, everyone. But get obviously the credibility of your sources kind of determined. But then even you go even deeper again in terms of, is the Financial Times a legit media source? Yes, it is, but then make sure you can verify that then against maybe an academic journal. So like, I mean, and a number of academic journals, and then there's different layers of academic journals, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, unpublished, and so on and so forth.
Because I imagine with a lot of, like, probably even first years, look, they're not educated in terms of, writing, big projects and all this kind of stuff. You probably would come across, I found this in the Sun article.
Wikipedia, that's my favourite. I say it to all of them. Day one, you submit and you submit anything to me with Wikipedia, and I will fail you. Yeah. I don't care how good it is. I will fail you immediately, because ultimately it doesn't matter how good a writer you are. If what you're saying is based on a tissue of lies, then what's the point? Do you know what I mean? So that going through that process of taking a blend of different sources from a blend of different perspectives, critical journalism versus academia versus market research kind of orientated, and bringing those different data points together. It's what we refer to, like, I mean, the term for it is triangulation of data, where you take data from a variety of different sources or different methodologies, and then you bring them together and say, this is how we are understanding this particular phenomenon. And there's no, like, I mean, there's no, well, if it comes from this source, it's going to be this. If it comes from this source, it's going to be this. It's not binary. There is an understanding rather than the understanding. Do you know what I mean? Like, so there's different perspectives, different realities, and so on and so forth. So, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's when you take stuff from illegitimate sources, and you know yourself, like, it drives me crazy if you go into an organisation and people start saying, my gut feeling is telling me I'm going to do this. I'm like, what? Like, you're not Elon Musk, your gut feeling tells you this. What the fuck? My gut tells me that I'm hungry. Like, you have to make your decisions based on insights and data. And sometimes you can come up with something creative, and that's not all based on it, but ultimately there has to be some degree of understanding there in terms of what the consumer is going to react to, what is trending at a particular moment in time, verification of your product, whatever it is. You have to base your decision on some degree of research. And again, in an age where everything is very, very fast, things like critical journalism are starting to die off very, very slowly.
I think that's and what you said there, I think it's interesting also to say that, like, a lot of these sites, they make their money on traffic, and ads and all this kind of stuff, and they just want people on their website. They don't give a shit what you're reading, they just want you on the website. So I think it's important to say that when these kind of critical sites or amateur news sites or opinion blogs or whatever it is, when they need to pump out something quickly so that it'll be the first on social and get spread, that is a digital marketing executive trying to keep his boss happy by getting people on the website.
100%. I know for a fact that there are some companies that hire in executives, journalists, bloggers. There's a blurred line between all of them these days, and like, their job is, when you get this much engagement, then you can stop working today. Yeah. It's not based on hours, it's based on pure raw engagement. You know what I mean? Pumping. So there's and then it shows you that you have to have a huge amount of respect for journalists that do critical investigative work.
My next paper is out in 2 days.
Absolutely. Like, it's an art form, and it's a skill which is very much underappreciated. And we were talking about it with Jonathan Healy before the break. And again, the idea of that investigative journalist, it's something that is harder and harder to come by, and it's one of the most important things. Like, we saw it even with for our Mexican listeners, you probably wouldn't have heard of this, but like Mark Teig and Paul Rowan, I think it was, released the Champagne Football book before Christmas, basically castigating the life and times of John Delaney. And again, that was something that, it was an insight into a really important institution in Irish society and culture, Football Association of Ireland. That doesn't happen unless you have someone with the credibility, the skill, the intellect, and the bollocks to actually go off and actually investigate something like this, and
have the balls to publish it at the
exactly.
end. Yeah.
So that type of person is someone who we should be putting at the absolute top, or the pillar of content, whereas in actuality it's more the quick wins is what kind of a lot of people are going for. So look, it's interesting.
Anything that's popped up, I suppose, over the last couple of weeks for you?
So the obvious one that we probably have to mention is GameStop. If I hear anyone else go, we're going to the fucking moon one more time. Yeah,
did you jump on the bandwagon? Did you?
No, I don't. Now, for all of our listeners, I am not a stock trader. I do not profess to know a huge amount about that. This is basically it. Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but not enough to be
no
credible.
More than me, anyway.
So basically, this is fake news essentially. In terms of, I wouldn't have a tick next to my name for understanding the stocks in my new Twitter utopia. But basically, there's a load of day traders, a number of investors, basically fighting back against Wall Street. A lot of Wall Street hedge funds have shorted a number of what we call probably traditional stocks, GameStop, AMC Entertainment, stocks that they basically bet on that are going to fucking go through the floor, basically. This limits these companies' ability to raise capital, which puts them in jeopardy. And basically a load of Reddit users, which fall under the kind of domain of Wall Street Bets, basically said, right, they're all the hedge funds are after shorting these particular funds. Therefore, we are going to pump those funds by buying a load of stock. That inflates the price, which means that the short doesn't work effectively. It's the opposite effect of that, which means that these hedge funds are on the hook for billions and billions and billions. Now, I love seeing Wall Street getting screwed. I love the people, the power to the people stuff and all the rest of it. However, there is also something that needs to be, like, this is gambling ultimately, right? The majority of people who are engaging in this activity don't know
the outcome.
And how this is going to go. And ultimately, right, if you bankrupt your hedge fund or whatever the case may be, and then you stick, because ultimately a lot of people are doing this so they can get a return, right? Yeah. Some of them are doing it for the movement and the anti-capitalist stuff, but ultimately there is a goal of getting money here out. If everyone then starts withdrawing their money, that's not how then the stock collapses. Do you know what I mean? So they might make, like, I mean, it's at, I think, like, it went up to 450, then it went down when Robin
very low,
Hood,
wasn't it? It was
$20
something up to, as you said,
up to 450. Then it went down because Robin Hood stopped people trading on their app, and they're in big trouble at the moment. Hopefully they'll be investigated by the SEC. But then the stock went back up to, I think, about 350, 400 it was this morning. So, like, what they're basically waiting for is a squeeze when the hedge fund guys have to either reinvest the capital to keep the price high, and that spikes the price even higher, or they don't and they lose their money. So, like, there's there is very much a situation here where the hedge funds are kind of going to lose either way, but I don't know where the real winner is on the other side either. Do you know what I mean? Like, for the individual, for the group, yeah, absolutely.
But it's not just like, you know, something that's happening, as you said, over in Wall Street or in America, and no one's really talking about it. It's something that's happening privately. Like, this is seriously blown up in terms of news, and everyone's talking about it. There's memes all over the place.
Oh, it's brilliant, but
Bernie Sanders put up a tweet, something about basically delighted Wall Street's getting a kick in the arse. He said it's corrupt.
Wall Street is a shot, but to be fair, he has a point. If you have it, like, look, AMC Entertainment, all the cinemas have been closed for the last fucking year, right? You've got GameStop, obviously a struggling business in terms of physical retail, in terms of the gaming world, which is one of the most quickest, fastest paced industries in terms of digitalization.
Everyone's just buying online now.
You take these two industries, you shouldn't be able to pump the stock because they're not worth any. Do you know what I mean? They're worth something, but they're not worth a huge amount. So it's an overinflated market that ultimately needs to crash, and that needs to land somewhere. That burden just doesn't disappear. Like, do you know what I mean? So it's there is a logic to what they're doing in terms of the movement and screwing over Wall Street, but I'm interested in what's the end game here. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of it like, there's another spike at the moment, which is a Dogecoin, which is a cryptocurrency. That coin is called a meme coin, and that basically means that the coin was created by its original founder as a joke, because he's basically said cryptocurrency is a lot of nonsense. I'm going to create one and show you how ridiculous it is. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, and this Dogecoin now is spiking. So, now I would say that, like, and I don't want to go into a huge amount on it, but if you look at, like, Amazon and all these companies, like Amazon release a press release and all of a sudden saying that they're going to get into freight, and all of a sudden DHL and FedEx and UPS shed billions in market capitalization just on the foot of a press release. So there's, like, the market has been in trouble for a while in terms of the legitimacy around stock prices, I think. And again, I don't profess to know a huge amount about it, but I have read about it. And this is just another example of that. It's a form of market manipulation. Elon Musk, another example. Yeah, he came out about it. It was also, I think it was mentioned in the White House press secretary and stuff like this. Like, you know, it's as I said, it's blowing up, like, you know. Yeah. And but what's going to be interesting now is
who's next? Who's the next company that they can do this to as well? You know?
Oh no, it's a spiral. Like, and again, I'm interested.
It's almost like everyone's at home. We're bored. Let's do something.
But there is an element to that as well. And with the likes of these apps, like your Robinhoods, where before you'd have had to go to a trade like Fidelity or something like that to help you with your a brokerage to help you with your investing. Nowadays it's just go on Revolut, go on Robinhood. I want to invest in this. 2 minutes, you're in. Like, you know what I mean, you're a day trader. So there's it's an interesting dynamic, and I think you're going to see more people getting into it. More people are going to lose money. A lot of people are going to win money. Winners and losers and all these things, right? And that's essentially what's going to happen here.
But it's only been going a few days, so I suppose might come back to it next week if there's been any more developments.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it ends. How it comes to a fall. Like,
someone has to really press the red button somewhere.
Yeah. And there was a Wall Street hedge fund manager on, like, I think it was CNN yesterday, and he was actually crying. It was fucking hilarious. It was like, fuck you, like, you capitalist scum. So one other thing that I think is just of interest more than anything else, I just saw it and to kind of bring it back from going away from the macro kind of world movement problems that we've solved.
You're bringing it back to Cork,
bringing it bringing it back to proper marketing. So I think it was interesting is that Diageo have basically gone off and they've created an internalized proprietary software. I think it's called something like Catalyst Analytics. And basically what they've said is during the lockdown, this has allowed them to increase the value of their sales for the off license, for the on, obviously the at home consumption market. And they're basically saying that when we look to understand our off license market or kind of pub market or stuff like that, we didn't actually have the analytical capability to, or no company did. So therefore they're after building this proprietary software which basically combines macroeconomic data and behavioural consumer data to understand behavior, and then that impacts upon obviously their product development, their stocks, their supply chains, and then obviously their marketing as well. So I think it's interesting. I think we mentioned this a number of months ago, where the on-premise or the on-site analytics still isn't very strong relative to the digital side of things, obviously, where you could measure click-through rates and conversions and attribution and stuff like that. So I think that's very, very interesting in terms of how is that going to develop over the next kind of 10 years? And is there going to be a company that takes that data and uses it, or is there something that we can do to
someone like Cambridge Analytica, is it?
Kind of, well, something like that. But even just as a small, so one company that I'm working with at the moment, and we've got a huge amount of data. So you've got all the online stuff, but we also have tickers on the door so we can measure footfall, scanners outside to make sure that we can measure the amount of footfall outside the shop and the conversion in terms of the amount of people that are coming, people are looking. So we've got a huge amount of data. We use Tableau as a means of kind of visualizing that data. But I went and looked to see, is there actually a marketing tool that we can plug all this data into and spit stuff out to us and combining it with marketing? There wasn't anything really there that I was kind of happy with. So I think this is a huge space that could be disrupted, and that's the physical purchase consumer behavior insights and analytics and stuff like that, and not at a macro level, which we have, but at a kind of a very, very micro level for your business, that you can combine a hybrid of your online data versus your offline data as well.
Actually, just on me there, when you were talking about the the drinks company in Diageo, we kind of a few weeks ago we mentioned, or a few episodes should say ago, we were talking about the alcohol zero and stuff like that, or like Guinness Zero and all these kind of companies. I wonder, they were on a trajectory basically to increase sales, record breaking for, I wonder, has that gone down? Because the real need for, the majority of the need for these alcohol zero companies was in the pub, people driving. People are at home now, so has the demand for all that gone down? People may be getting healthy as well. Maybe there's an element. There is an element to that as well. Not health as such as another. There's another kind of. Totally off topic. Just popped into me. No, it makes sense. So the data that Diageo said that their overall revenue is up, and they basically expected a 4% drop. And this is based on this behaviour, which allows them to control stocks. There's. It's interesting. The way it's going. What you were saying there, in terms of businesses made plans, new product development and so on and so forth for certain behaviours which no longer exist. I was listening to a guy a couple of weeks ago at this stage podcast, I think it might have been David McWilliams' podcast, but he was basically saying that all of the big data analytics that we would have had going back years and years and years, that data is fucking useless because behaviour has basically been blown out of the water, and it's completely unprecedented. And no one knows what behaviour is going to be like. We have vaccines coming, yes, we have a light almost at the end of the tunnel, but no one knows yet what the behaviour will be like out of that.
Exactly.
Our business is going to leave people at home.
Yeah.
Are there, are we going to have big amounts of people back in shops again? Our pub's going to be back open to full capacity.
Our people, and people have gotten used to things like, ordering those make-it-yourself packs, for example, rather than going to the supermarket. That's something that people are enjoying. Will they keep on doing it?
So no matter what you think is coming, we still can't predict a certain amount of it.
It's guesswork,
it's interesting. But look, we'll wrap it up there. I think good to get back on, I suppose, the podcast. We have plenty of plans coming down the line. We've guest speakers actually coming up. We've gotten some great emails. We do. I didn't tell you, did I not?
No, I missed the meeting.
We've actually been given some great suggestions for guest speakers. So keep those coming in if there's anyone else interested. But we have those coming up over the next couple of weeks. And thanks very much for listening. Best of luck.
Yeah. See you later.